Afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, which is all about artificial intelligence in accounting. My name is James Wright. I'm delighted to be joining you today. I'd like to say a massive thanks to the ACCA team, to which I'm a professional member of the body, and also the LearnSignal team who have put on today's webinar in collaboration. About me personally, so you know if you've never seen me before, I work at the University of Lincoln as a senior lecturer. My previous background, I worked in practice for 3 years, and I currently work in the education sector, to which artificial intelligence is affecting all of us. So hence probably why you're here today. Feel free to take any screenshots. We've got the slides you can actually download, and feel free to post on LinkedIn, social media, take a screenshot, tag us in it, keep connected, and we'd love to hear your feedback at the end of the webinar today, because we've also got a free CPD course that will help develop your knowledge in terms of artificial intelligence as well. But for your notes, if you're quite old school like I am, the things that we'll be talking about in today's webinar for your notes are all about the main concepts of AI. How is AI sort of embedded within businesses? Actually, how do we implement AI? The latest industry reports that will go through some overview figures today, and so you can find them afterwards. And then also, finally, the implications about the future in terms of AI, where we'll have a short Q&A at the end where you can ask me anything on there. But without any further ado, I realise we have members today who are joining us who have little to no experience of actually what artificial intelligence actually is and how it sort of actually works within the accounting sector. Now, it comes into effect in a variety of different ways. So I understand we've got people here today, public sector, private sector, could be in tax, could be in audit. I'm going to try and make this a sort of holistic approach, but it's all about the user running queries with the actual artificial intelligence system to detect relevant solutions from the available data. That is the key thing for your notes, that we take the data, no matter what sort of sector you're working in, and then the artificial intelligence can interpret it, and actually we can make decisions based on that. So for your notes today, as a sort of general overview, actually, how is AI in accounting currently? Well, we have areas such as recording transactions. So the good old days of me working in practice about the sort of bank reconciliations and invoices. We'll go through a few examples of that today. But there'll be lots of people here who are all involved in performance measurement, forecasting, control, monitoring processes. These are the sort of things where I want you to take away from today's webinar to say, right, what have I learned from it? And then what can I actually take back to my workplace? And the key thing I always say from anyone who comes to my classes, what can we put into practice? That is the key thing here. So taking that into a more sort of, let's try and group people who are here today into different areas for AI and accounting. What we'll see later on into the presentation with a few little examples is we'll have automation of the financial reporting process. So if you work in practice, preparing reports and the annual returns for your clients, maybe tax computations. We also have, secondly, continuous monitoring and auditing. So think of those substantive procedures, sampling as well on there. I touched on earlier about tax, so the compliance and planning, forecasting, different tax rates and allowances that the artificial intelligence can actually pick up on using different softwares that you may be using in your business. And then finally, but not least on there, detecting and preventing fraud from an ethical perspective as well. So the artificial intelligence may take a massive sample of data, trying to pick out outliers, which then you would use and actually analyze it to say, hang on a second, what have we actually got here? Do we need to actually take this further, or do we actually need to inform the actual authorities on that? So now we're coming on to, so that we can set the baseline for today. As you can see on the screen, and I'll give you a bit of time now for it as well, just so it loads up and you can get your fingers going on there as well. I've got a simple question so that I know how to sort of pitch it today in terms of the level of detail and the questions at the end. So you can see on the screen that we've got, how would you describe your current understanding of artificial intelligence on there? Sort of a seesaw approach where it should be loading on your screen now, where we've got not very well, I need to learn more. Or you've got option C for a sort of reasonable understanding. I've heard about it on the news, I've seen it on the Beeb, something like that. Or maybe your option D, James, I'm tip top on there. I want a bit more detail today going into it, which I think you'll enjoy from some of the reports as well on there. So I'll just give you a moment so that we get as many submissions as possible. We're already up to over nearly 40% on there. But it's just so that you can see who's joining us today. And also the added value of coming to a webinar like this is you get to see the opinions of other qualified members from around the world and on this specific topic of AI on there. So I'll just give it a small moment, a bit longer. Maybe even have a think to yourself as to what do you think the general consensus is going to be of people who are joining us on today's webinar? Is it a topic area that people are reading just before they go to bed, or is it not quite sure how that is put into practice, James, on there? So I'm just going to give it another 5 seconds or so. We've still got a few more people popping in. We've got over 50% already, which is fantastic. And then we'll go into actually putting this into practice, a practical sense, so that you can actually see how it can work. In other words, going away from today's webinar, what could you put into practice if you own your own practice, you work in an industry, you might be in tax, whatever it may be. There are sort of steps that I'd be thinking about, liaising with your team on there as well. Lots of different things that could help you out. So looks like we're getting over 60% now. Should we have a look at the results, ladies and gentlemen, on it now? So here we go. How would you describe your current understanding on artificial intelligence? We've got just under 20%, not very well on there, which is okay, which is perfectly fine. Some people have never had any exposure to it. We've got about 50% saying I need to actually learn more. Well, that is brilliant news, as I've got some key terminology I'll walk and talk you through later. Reasonable understanding, so about a quarter of us joining us today. I'm sure you've all maybe had a go with some chat GPT on there, or we've got 3.6% of very good, which when we get onto those reports, I think will add a lot of value to it on there. So really to sort of set the stage on there now, or set my stall out, should I say, we need to consider this as to if you're working in an organization, small, medium, large enterprise, maybe it's your own business on there. I work in the education sector where I use AI, where I actually have AI to do all of the wording for my videos on there, the captions. So AI actually reads what I'm saying and then puts all the captions together. It's coming into practice in different businesses and different organizations. So this is a reason as to why you should consider implementing AI. What are the sort of functions that, again, going away from today's webinar, what could you put into practice? What could help you out in your career? Again, to maybe reduce that fear factor so you go, I could have a really good go at that. So first of all, we've got to consider actually where would it add value and how does it link into the theory of finance? So on here, we're actually just looking at the sort of basic theories of how a company is valued on there. And that's where you can have a look at the shares, the value of the company going up in terms of like dividends on there. Other factors are brought into it. But this is where AI could be a USP for your organization, that it could increase those discounted cash flows into the future and hence create added value. In other words, by embedding it into the organization, it could increase the value of that company. So from AI, this will be something, if you're going to jot it down in your notes, what I would be looking to actually implement and how I put it into practice myself, especially with my lectures, my recordings on there, how will it benefit you? Well, first of all, in terms of cost, there are some AIs which are embedded in softwares that are available in your practice, organization. So that reduces the cost down on there. So maybe you wouldn't have to hire as many people. You may not have to incur as many costs to actually get the product or service that you deliver to the client. And hence from that, it's going to be more efficient in how you go about your processes. This is where it's going to be put into effect operationally. And therefore, it should give you a greater return in the hopefully short term, but definitely long term, because you're going to get better at it on there. So these are just the benefits of saying to yourself, right, maybe I don't use AI much in my role, if at all, at the moment, but these are the factors. If you're starting up your own business, you work in a big organization, that I would be looking at, and especially from a time perspective, that is something that AI saves me a lot on as well. Imagine if I had to go type out everything that I said in a class, in a lecture, from a efficiency point of view, and also costing. I don't have someone who has to transcribe it for me. That is a massive benefit. So now we've got to consider on here as to AI in accounting. How can it actually benefit you on there? And these are the sort of 4 different areas which we touched on earlier before, where they're sort of grouped into different sections that maybe you fall into probably one on here, but then you may also want to be considering it for other areas of your business on there. So an example of that, literally from yesterday, we had one of our organizations who we have partnerships with. They have a AI robot on their website. I was chasing them up yesterday because you know what it's like. You send an email, you don't hear back from someone in a week or 2. And it was an important thing that we needed to get the ball rolling with our partnership to take it forward into the future. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to go onto their website. I'm going to see if I can find another way. And they had an AI robot on there. Again, this is the other different areas you can consider. And I was having a quick chat to the AI robot. It then forwarded my email on to the correct party. And lo and behold, that afternoon, I was actually chatting to a person who was the right person who I needed to get in touch with on there. So these are the things that you can use AI in collaboration with the employees who you actually have in your organization to a really good effect that query was dealt with all in the background. And again, it reduced that cost and efficiency. So these are the 4 areas we're going to touch on, but it's just so that you can have it in a bit more detail. And so you hear some more examples like, oh, I didn't consider that. We now also have key success factors in actually implementing AI in accounting now. So the sort of key critical success factors that can ensure effective implementation of AI on here. So we're going to have a look at these in a bit more detail now. And here we have resources, innovation, operations, and finance. This is where if I have someone who comes to me and says, James, can you walk and talk me through the primary areas that are going to be critical to implementing AI and how is it going to work and be embedded? This is where we need to be considering it in a bit more detail and separating out into different areas. But before we go on to that, this is where I'm going to use my tech on here, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to send everyone a pulse check, it's called now, that you can see on the screen. And it gives you a thumbs up or a thumbs down. And my question to you is, for the pulse check, you can see on your screen, is, are you aware of current AI practices in your workplace? So whilst we've got it on the screen, the resources, the innovation, operations, and finance, pop a thumbs up if you are aware of AI practices. Maybe you discuss it at board meetings. Maybe you have a team discussion. Maybe you have someone designated in your team who actually you go, oh, hang on a second, they're actually going to go away and do a bit of research on it, maybe where we can look at new ideas. This is so that the Learn Signal, the ACCA team, and to be honest, for my eagerness on here to see, I'm just curious as to, I get excited by it. I go, oh my word, maybe I could have got AI to actually do this webinar for me. That was my first thing when the guys came to me. I thought maybe I could get an AI robot to do it for me on there. But this is so that you can actually see the differences between how it's operating in different sectors and what people are thinking who are joining us here today. So just in case you want to hear that question again, are you aware of the current AI practices in your workplace? So if you work in industry, in practice, got your own business on there, you might have someone who's doing it on there. But what we're looking at the moment is that it's more swaying towards a thumbs down at the moment. We've got nearly 50% people answered. But that's really interesting as to how it's actually being taken up in the sector versus we're going to be looking at some of these different areas that you can look to actually implement it as a critical success factor on there. So we're coming up to about 50% of people who have answered our lovely pulse check on there, where we've got 120 thumbs up currently and 167 thumbs down for are you aware of current AI practices in your workplace? So we're swaying on that lots of people are not aware of the current practices in your workplace. So one of the things I'm quite old school on here for my pen and paper. I always say, what is my action that I'm going to take from this webinar on here? Is pop it down in your notes from today, maybe going away to have a talk with your finance director, your line manager, maybe you've got a team below you on there. Pop it on the agenda for the next meeting to say, right, does anyone here currently use AI in what they're doing on a day-to-day, week-by-week basis? And maybe actually have an open discussion to say, are we able to actually implement that as a team, as an organization? And the other thing which we'll touch on later on is lots of people who are joining us today use and operate with different softwares. So when I was in practice, we used to have Iris, we used to have Sage on there, Zero. All of these softwares are now starting to embed AI within their software. And obviously you've got other third parties, but maybe pop it in your notes from today is to, you guys pay a lot of money in an organization, if it's your own business, for the softwares. So why not try and actually utilize the resources that they have available on there? Again, to try and get as much added value to say, how can we use AI more effectively in what we do? So I'm going to end the pulse check now. We've got over 50%, which is fantastic. Thank you very much to everyone who has answered live. That's brilliant. And the overall consensus, if you're watching the recording of this, is that we had 142 thumbs up that they are aware of current practices of AI in the workplace, but 180, that's a dodgy thumbs down, who are not aware of current AI practices on there. So again, definitely something to consider. So let's come back to the prime areas of the critical success factors now. And this is where resources, innovation, operations, and finance, I would break it down for your notes so that you've got to think about, you've got to have the right skills in place to actually operate and implement AI. It's taken me a bit of time to go through it, to actually work out systems, how it works. And then this is where, as an organization, you don't want to fall behind the curve in terms of innovation because one of your competitors may have AI embedded in the product or the service that you provide. And that means that their costing could go down and then your margins are going to get squeezed even more. This is the next bit on here. Operationally, what I would do if I was in your position, again, going away from today's webinar, is finding out in the organization that you work in, who is comfortable with AI as a tool in how they use it and who is interested to work out and learn more about it on there. Because what you want is to have it embedded within your actual operations so that it will work effectively. There's some people in the accounting sector where this is completely new to them. They've never been onto ChatGPT. They've never had a look at anything to do with AI, which is fine on there. It's new. It's developing on there. So thinking about that again from a finance perspective, how will the entity actually finance this, where you have some free tools, but then you have some paid ones? That's where I was saying to have a look at your actual softwares that you currently have in your organization. Go back to them and say, what are you currently doing and what are you going to be implementing in the future? Again, that is so that you stay ahead of the curve from an innovation point of view. And to break it down into some action points from here, you're going to have to allocate time in terms of training. There are also going to be ethical and operational guidelines that, let's take ChatGPT for an example, that if you put in there that you could quite easily from today's webinar, AI in accounting, what does the future hold? And the AI will actually go through a load of invoices for you. It will put it all together. It could go through all your bookkeeping on there. It could, the opportunities are becoming more and more widespread, and hence why you're seeing in the audit sector now the sampling and how auditors are using it to their advantage to cut down on the manual time what they used to previously have to do. However, this is the key bit with ethical on there. You cannot wholly and exclusively rely purely on AI for it. That is where you as a professionally qualified accountant come into it, and the communication and the accountability, as you can see from the other points, is this the right decision? You should know the client, the organization, the supplier, how you're actually dealing with them. And granted, we want that quality and efficiency in the operations, how we get to and go through that data, like we touched on at the start of this presentation today. But then this is where it's going to come on as a question at the end, I know it is, as to, James, I'm worried as an accountant that AI is going to replace me. What can I do about it? And this is one of the added values, that you can use the AI tool to generate that data to perform an output, but then you've got to make the ethical decision from it to say, is this the right course of action based on what we know about the current market conditions or the client on there? And then from that, how do we communicate that to our stakeholder groups, internal and external, also the board as well, so that they are kept in touch? So this is where you as an individual, you are becoming, as you are the entity where you provide value, whether it be to clients, to other people in the organization, and to take that information and then actually disseminate it correctly. Now, this is very interesting on here as to, I always get this, and we're bound to have it in the Q&A as well, because we already had a question before we'd even kicked off today, as to findings from the latest sort of industry report. So I always get asked, James, give me a couple of reports as to where I can get a bit more insight as to how AI is getting put into the accounting sector, how much of an impact is it actually going to have? And this is where you're going to have two credible resources before we get into some technical aspects of AI, just so you know some of the actual key abbreviations if they were to come up after this webinar. So, I know that. James told me to write it down. Don't worry. Very official in my webinars. I've got them all written down, ladies and gentlemen. We have them on a post-it down here, but I'm going to highlight them for you on the webinar as well. So the first report, again, just to keep you in touch in terms of the accounting market size and the share analysis, in terms of artificial intelligence, the growth and the forecasts, how much it's going to actually be compounding and actually implemented in the sector, is we have the Mordor Intelligence up there, the report on there. So maybe think of it if you're a big Lord of the Rings fan. I don't know on there. If you don't know what Lord of the Rings is, that's for a different webinar. But the report estimates a compound annual growth rate of 32.58% in the AI accounting market by 2028. So in other words, the growth over the next 5 years from 2023 to 2028 is going to be over 32% on there in terms of the actual AI accounting market specifically. So this is where more and more firms, practice, industry on there are going to be implementing AI in their operations. So maybe you could be looking at that as, let's get ahead of the curve on this and start to think about that operationally, that we touched on, starting with the softwares, and then also what other sort of third parties could we use and embed. We also have on there that the report shows that the fastest growing market on there for AI in accounting, we have Asia Pacific market, the largest market in North America. Now for me, as we know, the world is getting ever more globalized on there. It's a case of, we have small, medium organizations. I know some small little sole traders in the UK who implement AI just as a competitive advantage. One of the key benefits that I find from AI, that you should look at it, because time is our biggest asset. I don't have any children or anything like that, but for any parents out there, AI is really good at automating and getting things done where you just don't have to think about it. So you can allocate your time elsewhere. Maybe you're studying, you've got other factors in your life that it could be considered. So if you think you've got tasks that are pretty manual that you think AI could actually do automatically for you, that could be something for you to go away and research from today. The next report, key one for your notes, we have the StrapView Research up at the top. Again, focused on the accounting market size, shares, trends, forecast, competitive advantage, and growth opportunities. So this just shows you actually the size and the value that the total AI in the accounting market size predicted by 2029 will be around 8.69 billion US dollars on there. So that's not million. We're all good with numbers here. We're talking billions on there. And this is where we have our first abbreviation, where if there was some key things for you to note down today, I always try and highlight them. The NLP, natural language processing technology, will primarily drive the market growth. So in layman's terms, I try and keep these things as easy as possible. Basically, what it's saying here is we have AI is using its technology to benefit accountants in two ways. Okay. First way is what we all know, the bread and butter of just simply the numbers, the figures on their financial accounts. Maybe it's a list of invoices, budgets, whatever. So quantitative numbers. This is where it may benefit people who are joining us today from a qualitative, from a sort of wordy perspective. Maybe you've got compliance, maybe you've got reports, anything on those lines. That is where the NLP, the natural language processing, takes the sort of admin side of an organization and can look to automate it and take all that bundle of information that from the days of working in practice, it used to be client center stuff in Word, in PDF, email, all the rest of it on there. The AI can take all of that together, pick out keywords for you on there, group it into a report, and then give you an output to say, right, here we go, James. This is for client X, Y, and Z. This is what you should be potentially considering on there. And then you use your professional, ethical side to say, right, do I need to dig a little bit deeper? How much reliance can I put on it? Is there anything I need to go through and have a look at again for a second check? Now, for AI in accounting, I'm not going to go into this in mega detail, but this is just so that you can actually see a few different areas as to, I understand, like I touched on earlier, we've got people who are working in auditing, we've got taxation, technology. AI replacing the traditional accounting is the classic question that I always get. So we've got the Q&A box at the bottom, guys, as well. Feel free to pop any in there that we'll be happy to go through. But from a general perspective, if anything is manual and it's consistent and the AI can actually track it, then that is where it will start to replace things such as bank reconciliations, listing of invoices, all of those sort of things. And we have the overall dependency of AI has increased because individuals and organizations who are understanding it and knowing how they can position and put it into their organization are seeing the benefits of reducing time, reducing costs, but there will still be the need for human accountants. We've got the ethical perspective on there, client relations. Yeah, you build perspective with other people that whether it's on via a Zoom call, it could be on a face-to-face meeting, it could be networking, that you build that trust for it. That we took some of our students out to Malaysia recently on there, and I messaged one of the directors of Baker Tilly, who I know he's an ACCA, FCCA member on there, but it was that human interaction, which he knows who I am. He's been to a few of my classes before. We've helped each other out. And that's where something that AI cannot add value in. It's that person-to-person interaction, which again, we can go into a bit more detail later, that you should be trying to see yourself as the biggest asset, as you always should do. We've got other areas such as technology on there, bookkeeping as well. All of these tasks can be actually made to be automated, that we have the client's records for a particular 12-month, 18-month period, whatever it may be. And then we can actually use sophisticated, simplified accounting systems. We also have on here revolutionizing audit. So think of, if we've got some auditors here today, then all that sort of sampling and going through the client records, and long gone are the days, hopefully, of in boxes and everything like that. But the role of auditors now has changed as to they have to use the technology to go through the client's records on there And then from the output that they get from the AI and the sophisticated technologies, the auditor has to go through it and say, what is it analyzed? What are we dealing with here? Do we have any outliers, anything that's material, and anything that we need to dig into a lot more deeper? So instead of it being just in the old days, like a small little sample, the AI will go through a heck of a lot more on there. So it does become a bit more robust. So that is where we can now start to have a look at this in terms of roles, strategies, and scope on there. We're going to have people who are board members here today, people who run their own businesses. You'll be thinking strategically as to, James, give me some insights into the next year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. There are risks associated with adopting AI if you don't implement it correctly. Depends on what your organization actually does. But going away from today, if there was one call of action to do, it's about setting a strategy out to put a plan into place to review how do we go from, and again, I'll use the example of in practice, where how do we go from getting the client's records in right at the start here to going through our team to analyze the information, prepare the tax computation, prepare the financial reports on there for the given period, all the way to the end where we get the client to actually sign off the accounts, sign off their tax return, and pay us on there. This is where you can actually look at that and go, what areas on here can we actually automate? Where could we embed AI into this? What scope do we have about the transactions and the operations that are being implemented here? And from a monitoring perspective, you can have AI to actually, we used to have it in the old days, we used to have a report that got pulled off to say which clients have actually got their submission for the end of the month. You might have that generated at the moment. But the AI can actually go through, because it's a list, they can actually say, right, we know when it's the last one, but then when it's due for this month, on there. But then when was the last time that we received an email or correspondence from that particular client? And then it can generate it for you. Again, saving time that you wouldn't have to go through all your emails or call people from the team on there. So these are I'm just trying to give you ideas that I go around in my head. That I go, how can I get AI to actually automate my life and to put things into practice? There are some examples away from accounting where people actually have everything from people's birthdays, other reminders put into place so that more and more of their life is implemented through automation on that. So now this is where we get into the more sort of technical aspects on here about the implications of AI for the future of the accounting function. So this is where we're going to be discussing now areas that no matter which sector you're in, it will help you out as to, and we touched on it before for it, that we had financial reporting, we've got auditing on there, tax compliance, and detecting and preventing fraud. So then what sort of processes, such as automation of the financial reporting process, how does it work? What can James give me today so that I can go away, do a bit of research on it? I know the correct terms. I know the right couple of good reports on it now, but how is it going to work practically on there? Well, this is where we have our first abbreviation for your notes on there. You'll see NLP. We talked about it earlier before, where we have the natural language of processing and how it is going to be applied. So this is all about the non-financial information that we have in financial reporting. So the disclosures that you guys have from your clients on there, the financial data the financial data of the numbers, the profits, the assets, the balance sheet on there. It's not the only source of information. And then traditional analysis was actually limited to the financial statements. So what this could do is it can go through the text and use that as a data source, and then it can pick out areas such as keywords on there, any areas of risk, non-compliance, so that this is the key bit, the added value. It reduces the human error factor on here that in the past, I bet you any money, it used to be, all right, here's the company tax return. You've got the software to generate it on there. You would go through because you know your client is maybe a farmer or something on those lines. And then you would go and make sure you've got the correct disclosures and any other things that needed to be going into that set of accounts for any stakeholders that may look at it Maybe they're going for a mortgage or something on those sides. Well, this is where you can use AI to say, these are the things that should be considered in a farmer's set of accounts and the non-financial information. So what I'm trying to get at is, this is what AI said for it. Now, this is what you guys would say as a professionally qualified accountant with years of experience. And then that's where you can use it to your added value to get a better output of higher quality. Again, the human in accounting will not be replaced in that form, because we need your professional judgment on it. We then have, from the actual natural language processing on there, it's a type of text analytics, or in other words, if you want to do a bit of research on sort of deep learning on there as to how the AI over time will actually get better at analyzing your clients on there. But it focuses on the computational techniques to analyze, and also from a speech perspective. So maybe you've actually got some notes from when you've gone to go see a client. You may have those disclosures. There may be new updates. Well, not maybe. There will be updates from IFRS on there, the different standards boards. We've recently had the sustainability standards that have been introduced. All these sort of things that, again, can help you to automate the processes and then build in to your actual processes of the business and the operations, a more sort of detailed approach, and so that you're not going to miss anything off. Now, the next one that we have on here, named entity recognition. Okay, so this is a method commonly used to extract useful information from text. What we're using here now for AI, and just picture it in your mind that you've got a client has sent you loads and loads of information, could be on a cloud-based system, or maybe they're still old school pen and paper. You've actually had to scan it and PDF and all that sort of stuff. But this is the key bit where it will save you tons of time, and automating it, that it detects and categorizes important critical information from the data and the raw text. It will go through it all on there that you can actually put into practice. Maybe it's for a supplier, maybe it could be for a contractor. And then this is where it's a sorting exercise, which in the past would be quite time consuming for any of us working practice or industry. But what it will do is it will sort it out into, here are all the areas for taxation, here are all the areas for auditing on there. This is where it can come into it, and it could, again, help you to add as much value to your organization. So what information can it actually extract on here? So again, I'm thinking about it practically from, if you work in tax, you work in audit, industry, anything like that. We've all been there where you can't find that client, or you can't find that particular year end or anything like that. This is to give you a few ideas that maybe you've got some suppliers who haven't paid you. Maybe you've got a client who has got a tax investigation on there, and you've got all these different records. This is where you can actually use the named entity recognition to actually go through all those records. It will ping it out into an output, and then you will have it all in one place, a heck of a lot quicker than it would be done manually on there. So again, it's just to give you a little flavor how you can put it into practice, so you can do a bit of research after this webinar to say, how can it benefit me and our organization? This is where it just goes into a bit more detail of the sort of technical aspects, using algorithms and predefined categories that we just looked at. So with names, dates on there, but with more and more attempts that the AI has at it, it actually gets quicker at analyzing. But it depends how the data is actually structured, the categories, what level of detail. But overall, if I was to say to you, go away and have a look through it manually, versus if you can use AI to your advantage to break it down, I think I know which one you guys are going to go for on there. So this is where, again, I always like to put in some practical examples so that, again, you can have a little look in your own time. If you want to take a photo of the screen or screenshot it, write it down. There are Microsoft and Google's examples on there that they actually use. So you've got Microsoft Azure's on there, and then Google uses AutoML entity extraction. So those are just some real life examples, big organizations, don't get me wrong, but it could just be that first step of you guys looking into it, so that from the webinar today, it could help you out to maybe redefine how your organization looks at its processes. Coming on to now, and we're getting to the end nearly, so just a few final more technical aspects. We have contract management on here. We might have some people who work in advisory. We might have some personal financial planners. Large companies have to deal with thousands of active contracts on there. And this is where we have the analytics can be actually quite popular for large entities. So this is where we actually understand those contracts at a much deeper level, and it can improve the contract management. So imagine you've got all these different contracts of all these different clients on there, and maybe there's a new update. Maybe there's been a breach of data in the organization. Well, the AI can actually go through all of these individual contracts and say, which one does it apply to, put it into an overall report, and then you can say, these are the ones that it applies to, James, and these are the ones that it doesn't on there. Okay, granted, you can still go through them all, but can you see how it's now saved you so much time, just from an example, from a contract point of view, but it can be applied in the audit sector and also in practice if you're producing annual accounts. This is a sort of picture that maybe you've seen on the Beeb or something like that in terms of the robotic process automation, also known as the RPA. And this is where it's a program on here that mimics and replicates human actions to complete any task. That is the key bit here for RPA. The key bit here is repetitive, okay? Repetitive. So it's where if you're looking to save costs in an organization, maybe you don't need as many employees because there's those sort of repetitive tasks. I'm thinking now listing invoices, bank reconciliations. This is where the RPA, the robotic process automation, will get better, and it will learn the processes that you want, all the transactions listed, date, description, and if it was a cash in or cash out, and it can do that, and it can go through a bank reconciliation and then splurt it out for you, that you would then go and produce the accounts in your accounting software on there. But the limitation, obviously, as you can see at the bottom, is that it's configured for tasks that have clear sequence of actions. So it must be a process that is just easily followed. If you try and give it too many different variables, that's where you could run into issues. And that's where, as we talked about, going away from today's webinar, what could you put into practice? These are the things on there. So a classic example, you'll have this, no matter what industry you're in. We've all had clients in the past. They'll send you different emails. They'll send you Word documents, PDFs, memory sticks, anything like that. And what the RPA can actually do is they'll find the client's name, that it could be saved in different areas on the system. It could be on the cloud base. And then what would usually happen of the job of an employee, as you can see on there, would be to actually manually search through the organization, email Carol or call them up or Teams call, anything like that. And can you see all of this time that goes into it to recover those numerous invoices, transferring data, looking through the information system? This is the added benefit that it could do for your company or organization, is that the RPA tool can be used to actually automate this, where if it's trained and put into practice effectively, embedded within the system, it can gather relevant data quickly and efficiently, assuming obviously it has the relevant access to emails, or if maybe you've actually put it into one area on a cloud-based system, it will then find all the documents for that particular client, supplier, auditor, whatever it may be, combine it all together, and then it maybe will separate it out, depending on what you ask it to do, into, right, here are all the sales for it, here are all the expenses. It's just so you can see a practical example that we're going to have people who are working in practice here and going, hang on a second, James, that would save me days on there. So just to give you a flavour, before we get on to our sort of Q&A as to what you could actually sort, everything from, you might want a long list of all the different reference numbers to see if some of your clients have paid or not. The date of invoices for sort of your revenue recognition. You don't want any after the reporting period. Obviously, that's where your judgment comes into when it should be recognized. Any settlement periods as to, do we have any outstanding receivables on there? Maybe we've even had examples on there where on our records previously, we didn't actually have the details of the clients, how they were going to pay us. So you could even use AI to go through your system and say, right, tell me what the missing information is from clients listed A to H on there. And you'd be surprised, like what might not be on there. It may help you pick up on compliance issues, all those sort of things. And from this application, where I'm hoping you're going to get a lot of ideas and a bit of buzz out today to go, I'm going to have a good look at this. Everything from policies, we've talked about reducing costs, planning and forecasting into the future, whether it be for those reports, client deadlines, so you don't miss them. I even know some people are putting into practice AI. You know, when you've got clients who've got payments on account that are due 31st of July, 31st of January, the AI will pick out from all the clients who has a payment on account, who doesn't on there. These are sort of things that you wouldn't have to go through it manually. And finally, another example of intercompany reconciliation. So you might be dealing with umbrella companies. You might have a large group on there that you can pick out who's been trading with who. Were there any intragroup transactions? Did we have any markups, any margins? Are there any other factors that we need to consider on there? Maybe any provision for unrealized profit. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope I haven't fried your mind today. I hope you found it rather interesting. Hopefully I've given you a few new ideas. I've given you a few abbreviations, but you can see on the screen my final question to bring today's lovely webinar, which has been an absolute delight to join you with today, is artificial intelligence something you're going to research and look to apply more after this webinar? So we've touched on a variety of different areas, saying what actually is artificial intelligence, like with an example of like ChatGPT that anyone can go away and use from today. Then from that, how it can be implemented in different businesses, the problems, the benefits associated with that. We have a couple of reports that hopefully you got jotted down, or you can refer back to in the recording of this video, that you can see how it's going to be progressing, and it will link you to other credible areas, because obviously if you want to listen to the gurus of the world, and depending where you're getting your research from, maybe don't listen to your kids on TikTok who they've been listening to. But also, finally, the implications for the future, where I see AI as something that you can use as a unique selling point. It can save you a heck of a lot of time, can reduce the costs, and can make you more efficient in your actual practices, no matter if you're in practice, if you're in industry, if you set up your own business, anything like that. So my question for you, coming back to it again, it should be on your screen. It's great to see we've got so many people plugging in. A for yes or B for no. Is artificial intelligence something you're going to research and look to apply more after this webinar? We'll just give it another quick second on there. I'm just going to have a quick sip of tea. Beautiful. And then we've got a bit of time at the end now to have a little look at some of your questions, because obviously an accounting webinar on AI, we're not going to have any questions from this. It'll be completely radio silence at the end. Who knows? Well, it's fantastic. Final ones, guys, pop in your answer on there. We've got over 50% already, which is absolutely fantastic. So, is artificial intelligence something you're going to research and look to apply more after this webinar in your own personal life, in your own business, organization, anything like that? Well, in the famous words of Family Fortunes in the old days, yeah, sorry if you don't know that, but our survey says, nearly 97%. Fantastic on there. For our 3% who sadly put no, sorry if I've put you off on there. Maybe you've had a little event in your life with AI on there, or maybe it's just not for you. But I would, even if it's something that you've got no experience on, just give it a quick use, as to it's going to be a great tool that if you implement it correctly and use the right resources on there, I think it's only going to benefit you. Now, I did promise at the start of today's webinar that thanks to our kind collaborators for today from the LearnSignal team, you can actually, if you get your phone out now, we're going to be using a lot of technology today. If you scan that QR code that you can see on the screen, that is where LearnSignal have kindly put together a ChatGPT prompts for accountants, a free 2-unit CPD course that you can access on there. So if you want any more information about LearnSignal and any more of the sort of CPD courses that they offer. I've also put down there the support email at the bottom. You can get in touch. You can find them on their website. And as well, they're also a learning provider for ACCA, gold accredited, that if you have some students within your organization who are maybe looking to study for their exams coming up, feel free to pass on their details for LearnSignal. They have free webinars your students can come along to on there, along with even maybe they want to do the CPD course as well. My name has been James Wright. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak with you today. As I said, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, take a screenshot of today, post it on LinkedIn, let me know, tag me in it as to what you thought of today, and it would be really good to keep in touch. And if you want to collaborate on anything in the future, the floor is yours. You're more than welcome to ask on that. But, ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, I'm going to come down to the Q&A that we have. Feel free to keep the questions coming in. The ACCA team and the LearnSignal team are managing the chat box and also the Q&A. Yeah, we've got a lot of questions on there, which is fantastic to see. So I'm just going to come to the first question on here from Jamie, and he's put, what would you recommend that accountants do to not be replaced by AI? Very good question on there to get us kicked off. Well, the first thing for that, which we talked about in the webinar itself, is actually, first of all, educating yourself and allocating time to get used to AI, whether that's having a try with ChatGPT on there or actually speaking to your software providers to say, we use your software to produce our accounts, to audit our firms. What currently do you have AI-wise that is embedded within the software that maybe we're not using? And the second key question I would ask the software providers is also, what updates where you're going to embed AI are going to be introduced on there? Well, the final one, again, I'm trying to make this as holistic for the different industries that we have here today, is, okay, you're my software provider. What other AI products are other companies like us or organizations using as well? Because if it ain't broke, don't fix it on there, to say if it's working for some companies, and also you don't want it to upset your provider in terms of the actual software that you have. Because then I'm thinking from a process point of view, that could just be massive bumps in the road. It could be holdups that, again, your organization and your staff frankly don't want, because you want them to be buying into the actual AI adopting into the future, because it is only going to get more vast on there. Other actual aspects in terms of how to not be replaced on there as well is think about how you add value to your organization. And granted, AI is fantastic. It can automate things. It can reduce down the cost. There are so many different aspects that it can benefit yourself as an individual or an organization. But there is always the human factor that can't be replaced on there. That is where you need the human factor to deal with the ethical side of it, to actually analyze and interpret what the AI has produced. And also the people factor, where we're in a working world now. I know my life is glamorous in our sort of lecture hall here where it's just me. But I have colleagues like you, Will, who maybe some just work remotely. I'm going to, after this, go and have a chat to the team down here who've kindly booked me the room. See people who have helped me out with some meetings that we've had in the past. All these sort of things is the people perspective is becoming more and more important than it ever has done now, because we've got so much technology on there. So this is where I would think about that, just take a step back and say, how can I become a more valuable person in the organization, whether that's through technology, developing my skills individually as well on there. So I'm just going to come to the next question on there. We've got a lot who have come in. So this is where the next one, how can I find out where AI is actually being used in my organization? Okay, that's a really good practical question actually on there. So this is where like I said, you've got to go and say, what areas am I involved in? What board meetings am I going to? Who am I interacting with? Maybe you can actually go and speak to your finance director, go and speak to your team. I'm not a betting man, but I would bet my bottom dollar that AI is being actually implemented by some of your staff and you will not know about it. So you might have, I mean, lo and behold, this could be a potential car crash, but imagine you've got a junior staff member who is doing work for you using ChatGPT to actually complete their work for them, or to give them advice, or to get them started, anything like that. And you might have no idea about it on there. And that could be a risk to actually misinforming clients on there. It could be anything that could lead to an improper disclosure, all of these different factors to actually consider, well, hang on, what's the contingency plan here? What could potentially go wrong? It's crikey me. So have a think about it, communicate with your staff, and actually what I would love to do here at the university, and I think I'm going to actually put it into practice, is to actually start a small working group or invite people to come along to say, the topic of conversation is AI in teaching. How are you actually doing it currently? You can use AI to actually produce slides on there. You can use AI to actually produce materials. All of these sort of things. The world is changing, and will you keep up with that trend on there as well? So I'm going to come on to, we've got, ladies and gentlemen, I think it's about 65 questions on here, which again, we'll be doing more sessions in the future. Okay, so Abhikik, question number, oh gosh, I've come on to question number 44 on here. How much accounting function would be taken over by AI in the near future? So again, it depends on what organization, Abhikik, you actually work in. But I always think, just take a step back and say, is any of the processes, like we saw from the robotic process automation, is there anything that just gets done the same every month, every quarter, every year, annually? Because those are the first tasks that, if it is manual and it can save time quite easily, and it's the same process, those are the things which will be first implemented AI-wise in any organization on there. Then you get AI in terms of actually, we've got the non-financial data is the next area. So if you're producing financial accounts on there, it could be used instead of going through them, putting in there manually. It all depends on the organization. But then replacing an accountant on there, you will always need your traditional skills and your professional development to say, right, this is what the AI has produced for this particular client who maybe owns a golf resort or something like that. And you're going to yourself, I know the client, I know that it's Dave, and he has 2 kids, and his team and the board of directors is made up of 3 or 4 people. All of these different factors that you know that they've had different areas that have been affected in the business this year. Golf is quite seasonal. I'm not a golfer, but you know, if it's cold and wet, people aren't going to play golf. But the AI doesn't know that. It will go through the financial and non-financial data, but it's that personal human side and the interpretation of the AI data, which is where you will actually implement that correctly on there as well. Mohammed, next question. So I'm trying to go through as many as you can for the time because we're a bit pushed. And Mohammed's put, what are the drawbacks of AI? Very good question on there, Mohammed, as to if you have someone at your organization who is using AI, ChatGPT, or through your software provider or a third party, using it on clients that you're not aware of on there, the AI could misadvise a client, or it could actually cause more work than expected. So it could actually push the costs up to rectify an issue that could have gone ahead. Other areas of risks that I'd be thinking of, if it didn't disclose properly, it could actually lead to a potential a tax case. It could lead to a HMRC investigation if you're from the UK. It could lead to fines and penalties on there if the AI didn't interpret what you put into it on there. All of these different things are the sort of red flags, the contingencies that go on in my mind. That's why, as we saw from the presentation, implementing this and starting off by saying, what is the process from start to finish that we get our product, service, advisory, whatever it may be, out to the client? Where can we look at it in individual stages and look to actually put it into practice and see if we can reduce those costs, make us more efficient, and use it as a competitive advantage on there. Right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm really sorry, but we've unfortunately reached time on the hour for today. We will be doing more sessions like this. It's fantastic. We've got loads and loads of questions. The ACCA and the LearnSignal team will be picking up on those as well. You can also download the slides from today. Like I said, keep in touch. Feel free to add myself, LearnSignal, or on LinkedIn, or for any of you more social media fans, I'm on Instagram and YouTube. Just put in James Wright on there to keep in touch so you don't miss out on any other sort of webinars that come up that hopefully I can add as much value to your career on there. But the last thing will be is just a massive thank you to ACCA and the LearnSignal team for giving me this opportunity. Thank you, everyone who has joined us today, the attendees. Crikey, we've got a lot in today. Fantastic stuff. I hope you all have a lovely rest of the day, and I will see you at another webinar soon. So thank you very much. Have a fantastic day, and I'll see you soon.